Thank you everyone for staying on to listen to this second part of the bullying webinar. This part of the webinar, as Daphne would have raised with you, is directed towards your role as managers, so managers of teams and employees and other workers, and some of the key points that should be borne in mind given the nature and responsibility of those roles. So, in light of that, the two main points that I thought we would touch on today, which will be most useful in terms of your roles as managers, are what is bullying in a more detailed sense, and grievance handling in the sense of what roles do managers have in the grievance handling process. So if we turn first to what is bullying, where and how. As we addressed earlier on in the first part of the webinar, bullying can take place face-to-face, but it can also take place outside of a traditional workplace environment. So over email from between members of your team at work, or through text messaging between employees and other workers, as well as internet chat rooms, instant messaging functions which you may have in the workplace, and other social media channels. For this reason, given the scope of bullying and the scope of situations in which it can occur, it's really important for everyone in their role of managers to understand the importance of some of the control measures around managing risks to health and safety in the workplace, and I'll turn back to those after we've just been through some of the other aspects of this previous slide. So another important aspect of the definition of bullying is who can bullying happen between? And the answer to that is that circumstances of bullying are much wider than we would commonly think of. So I think the most common aspects, the most common type of bullying, which most people would be familiar with, is individual to individual bullying, which is conducted downwards, so from a manager to employee level. However, as you can obviously understand, that's not the only type of bullying that can take place in the workplace. Bullying can also be group to individual, so a group of employees which might be a particular team or unit to a particular person who might be their manager. Individual to group, which is obviously one of the more unlikely scenarios, and also group to group, so groups of employees in the workplace engaging in bullying conduct. Bullying is not only conducted downwards, there's case law which gives us some examples of bullying that can be conducted upwards, so from workers to managers, and also sideways between workers of the same level or workers of a similar level. I thought that this would be a useful time for me to take you through one of the cases in this area around bullying conduct, which gives a really good example of how upwards bullying can and may take place in the workplace. In the case of New South Wales and Manor, which was a New South Wales Court of Appeal case, the employee claimed that her employer had been negligent in allowing her to be bullied for approximately 2 years in her position of team leader. The employee had been promoted into this position of team leader ahead of her former manager, and as a result of this, there was some discontent within the team. In the worker's new role, she was required to, and this is the phrase used in the decision, she was required to attack the workplace culture and assist in organisational restructure. In conducting this role, the worker alleged that she was subject to victimisation, harassment and humiliation and abuse, which amounted to bullying, including lack of cooperation from her team, rudeness, obstruction, and a refusal to accept proper directions to cease inappropriate work practices as part of attacking the workplace culture, I suppose. Conduct which treated the team leader in a demeaning and degenerating manner during meetings. Day-to-day undercutting of her role and at times open hostility, and excluding the team leader from meetings convened to document a list of grievances which had been made against her. In the particular circumstances of this case, the court found that the employer had been negligent in failing to protect the employee from this conduct in the workplace. This was particularly in light of the fact that the employer had failed to respond to the employee's requests for help and assistance to deal with her team's conduct. And the court found that her problems were well known by the employer. Each of her superiors was aware of her issues, and many of the issues would have been capable of substantial amelioration had they actually been dealt with at the time. Moving on from this slide now to the extension of bullying to external parties. So here what we're talking about is the fact that bullying may cause a risk to health and safety in the workplace of people other than employees of the business. And bullying can be conducted by third parties in a way that causes a risk to health and safety of employees in the business. So you might have an example there of a client bullying a worker in a workplace. You might have an example of an employee in your workplace, for example, bullying a contractor, so bullying a cleaning contractor who comes in to clean the office each night. And many of those situations will be captured by the bullying jurisdiction, and that's why I just wanted to raise them again as an important issue. As I touched on a couple of minutes ago, Vesture's already taken a number of really significant control measures to control the risk of bullying in the workplace. So these include setting out the expected standards of behaviour, and that's been carried out through obviously these training sessions as well as having detailed and up-to-date policies in place. The second control measure there is explaining to everyone the consequences of failing to meet the expected standards of behaviour. And again, that needs to be reiterated through ongoing training as well as ongoing reminders to employees about their obligations under some of those policies we discussed today. The third point there is providing support to workers, so ensuring that workers, employees in your team feel comfortable coming forward and raising any grievances they may have, whether or not those are related to bullying. And the fourth there is controlling the risk of workplace violence, which can again be done through providing that support to workers as well as making sure that workers are well aware of the consequences of breaching any of Vesture's policies in this area. In terms of specific manager responsibilities in this area and the grievance handling process, I thought I'd just take everyone through some of those key points to bear in mind if and when an employee ever comes to you with a grievance. So the first is how to handle a complaint which has been received. So the importance of procedural fairness to an investigation, and we have discussed some of those points earlier on in the session around providing the opportunity for an employee to bring a support person, for example, and providing adequate notice of meetings surrounding discipline and performance. The second there is duties and obligations that managers have in the process, so duties to receive grievances from employees, as well as duties to identify conduct which is evidently happening in your team. The third point there is how to conduct an investigation, so interviewing witnesses, interviewing alleged perpetrators, interviewing complainants. And the fourth, which really overlies all of those bullet points, is procedural fairness and its importance really throughout the whole process. Because as we've seen from the Harris decision, which I touched on earlier, the Commission is unlikely to be sympathetic to employers in circumstances where they've sat on grievances which have been made by employees for an extended period of time, in circumstances where employees aren't provided with all the information that they need in order to respond to an allegation which has been made against them. So what I thought we'd finish up with, in order just to give everyone the opportunity to engage in how a investigation or grievance handling process might work, is with a bit of a role play. So what I've given out, what you will all have in front of you is a role play there with 4 characters. And the way that we'd normally run these in training sessions is for everyone, is for one person to be each of the characters, go through them as a group, and then perhaps break up into small groups and discuss some of the issues that you may have identified with the process. Some of the issues there are hopefully glaringly obvious, others are more subtle, so hopefully that will give everyone a good opportunity to test kind of their understanding of the grievance handling procedures that Vesture has in place. After everyone's spoken in those small groups, I've then also provided, I suppose, an answer sheet with some of the ideas that I had about things which may have gone right and may have gone wrong in the process. Okay, well, thank you everyone for your time today, and I hope that the role play is a good way of kind of wrapping everything up, and that you've taken a lot from today's session in terms of understanding bullying and the place that Australian law has reached in terms of bullying. Again, if anyone has any questions, those can be passed on to Daphne, and Daphne, if you think that's appropriate, you're more than welcome to pass those on to me. So thank you again for your time this afternoon.